So welcome back to part 3 with Kobi. We have been doing this one on the fly. We keep bouncing in and out of what questions I came up with, and Kobi has some great thoughts and stories. So I did want to talk about something that she has made very clear that she's passionate about, and that is self-compassion.
Yeah.
And I'm for people, what is self-compassion to you? Either a definition or an example or something.
Yeah, I resonate with Kristin Neff's definition, which is being kind to oneself and treating yourself like you would a good friend. Often I find that people who are innately kind to other people can often be the most sacrificial to their self. So it's finding a way that we treat ourselves with respect, and the more compassion we can have for ourselves, it's compassion in, it's compassion out, the more compassion we can have for others. You know, generally if you come across someone who's quite judgmental of other people, who seems to always be putting themselves down or other people around, it's a compassion difficulty. Because no one who has true self-esteem needs to put anyone down in order to bolster themselves up. And so I feel like Kristin Neff's definition resonates with me because she talks about compassion being a 3-step process of mindfulness. So being aware of your thoughts and feelings in any given moment. It's about common humanity. So just recognizing that we're all the same. We all have the same humanness. No one's not important and no one's God. We're just as important as each other. And kindness. So treating oneself like you would a friend. So if a friend's had a bad day, I would be there with openness to hear what's going on for them. I would bring them something I know that they like. And so with self-compassion, it's doing the same to yourself. So before this interview, I needed some, so I got a coffee. And it's a constant checking in of, well, what's my need and how can I meet that need?
Yeah, very, very important of that. Again, the balancing act. There's definitely those that think too highly of themselves and those that think far too lowly.
Yeah.
And finding that that middle ground that's most beneficial to you, but other people as well. And yeah, I've seen that a lot. There's lots of people that will put other people down. It's an example of a bully. You know, put other people down because they don't feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
Then on the flip side of that, there's people that will do anything and everything for other people because they don't feel good enough.
And that's the flip side of the same coin of being perhaps self-subjugating to your own needs and self-deprecating. People are above me. I'm nothing. Or going the extreme of I'm godlike and no one could be as good as me. And both of those are unhealthy extremes, and to be honest, are both built on the same foundation, which is insecurity.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy.
And comparison.
Yeah.
In an unhealthy way.
Yeah. Because how would that ever be healthy? Like if you're engaging in comparison where you're like, I'm never going to be as smart as them, or I'm never going to look like that, or that'll never happen for me, then that's not fair. Because it's just an attack on self. But then the other flip side, if you're like looking down and like, no, I'm way better than them, I like my life's so much better in all these ways, then how is that healthy? It's just neither extreme is, and it's just coming to a place of that common humanity that no one's not important and no one's God. We're humans.
How is that? How has the rise in the self-care? I don't know if it's a movement, but I guess the self-care that people are performing, because I've seen it in various ways where maybe it's someone who quite honestly needs a break finally takes one. Some people having an extra piece of chocolate, maybe because they just want it.
Is it chocolate?
Like, yeah, maybe. But how I guess maybe has the increase in at least awareness of self-care in a positive way, like people are more open to it or take it more seriously, like even things like taking a mental health day. How have you found that with, I guess you've already kind of been doing that to an extent, either with yourself or trying to help other people do it for themselves. How have you found that?
I guess as a psych, my view is, and it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it's just my view is that the seed of mental illness does come back to people not having the skills to manage their strong emotions. And so then if there is a lack of nourishing self-care, then people are just trying to cope the best they can, so they could reach for the bottle or reach for drug or anything that's addictive, like someone who jumps from relationship to relationship, like it's all trying to fill a inner wound. And basically what it comes down to is a skill deficit, which is learning about appropriate self-care so that you can meet those underlying human needs, or you can soothe that wound that's being triggered in a healthy, nourishing way, not through some external mean to numb the pain.
Yeah, because I've seen, and it's hard to know the full extent of it, but there are some friends of mine who I think are probably closer to the putting themselves down, putting other people up kind of temperament, who do agree to the idea of self-care, but for them sometimes it's maybe they could have just slowed down a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Because I worry that for some, I think that it's good overall. I think that there are obviously care for yourself is not always like a nice soft thing. You know, tough love is also, self-care can be tough love.
Agree.
You know, and I think the only maybe not negative, but the only thing I see sometimes is the two can get a little confused of maybe self-care doesn't mean tough love. Like, for example, I've struggled with my weight and my size over the years. I wouldn't call it an eating disorder because it wasn't diagnosed, but it was getting close in 2015, and tried to get as skinny as possible, and it looked really bad. And then the last 2 years I've been really interested in physical training and trying to get healthy and strong and everything. And I know that there are times where you could call it self-care or whatever, have been slowing down. But a lot of the times it's taking a look in the mirror and being like, you need to work a little bit harder, buddy. And I hope that can be included in the conversation about self-compassion, of like, especially for me, like, instead of hating my body for how it looks, celebrating what it can do and then trying to make that better. Like, how awesome is it that I can run? How awesome is it that I can go rock climbing or something like that? No, I have all my hands and my limbs and they work, and I'm in healthy condition and I can rest and I've got clean food. And like, if I did that 3 hours a day every day, maybe I might need to slow down, but and that would be self-care. But sometimes you gotta go to the gym or eat your vegetables or something like that, and sleep. There's plenty of that hustle culture that I think can be good if it instills work ethic in people, as long as it doesn't lead to burnout. Which is the likelihood, especially with various things like social media pushing stuff like it depends on what you follow.
Yeah.
That nourishing thing. Like for
Yeah.
some people, it's nourishing to follow the calm down, have a cup of tea, have
Yeah.
a bath.
Yeah.
And for some people, they need that kick up the butt kind of stuff, and it's good for them. So yeah, it's a really interesting topic. So you've had self-compassion workshops.
Yeah.
What are those? What do those entail? Or are they the same every time, or?
No. Yeah, that's a good question. No. I come with a loose plan to most workshops about what I'm going to do. But what I do is when I get there, I try and find out as soon as possible who is in the room, who are the individuals in the room, what have they come for, what is their, what's driven them to respond to an ad about a workshop and show up. And that's how then I draw from that. And I suppose that's why it's artistry to me, because it's working with who those individuals are in the room and creating something to meet the needs of those 10 or those 100 of people who have entered that day. So I'll come with my agenda, but I'm flexible in that depending on the needs of the group, then I'll be flexible in how I meet the needs of everyone there. And so sometimes I'll mix it up in terms of what theories I might draw from, or be very intentional about what I share about myself. If I'm sharing about myself just for self-promotion or to be talking about myself, no. But in that context, if I'm sharing because I feel like that could then help in sending a message out about self-compassion, then it becomes an intentional sharing. I also draw from acting as well, and some of the beautiful techniques that we're exposed to in order to unlock closed emotional parts of ourselves. You really quite openly and honestly shared about difficulty you have around self-compassion. And so often I'll start a workshop with having people look into a mirror and noting the thoughts and feelings that come into mind when they first look at themselves. And then once we've gone through the workshop and worked on them building practical skills for self-compassion and self-care, then I come back at the end and ask them to look at themselves again and notice what thoughts and feelings come to mind. And why that reminded me of you is often, because this idea also came from, I mentioned before, also having an eating disordered background. So looking in the mirror, having these instant awful thoughts on the external version of me, and then going on this journey of self-discovery and learning how to be self-compassionate, so that when I do look into the mirror now, it's more around who I am, not what's on the surface. And like you said, you trying to make that flip of being appreciative for a body that has all its limbs, that's healthy, that you can climb a mountain, and that taking more of a focus than what's on the surface.
It's been really helpful. I have a problem with this to an extent. The phrase of like it could be worse, which is difficult because it can be helpful and it can be unhelpful.
Yeah.
But I listened to a podcast that's done by a retired Navy SEAL. It's called the Jocko Podcast, and he talks a lot about war, reads a lot of war books, and he has some veterans on every now and then. And to hear stories of guys that get blown up and they get their legs blown off, or they lose a hand, or they go blind.
Yeah.
And they still have a positive attitude in some way. They want to they want to do things. They want to get back. They want to whatever. It's not a pity party. And there's a time and place for checking in with yourself. But I think that's for me, that's been a method of, all right, well, I can still check in with how I'm feeling and what my problems are. But some people have other problems, and maybe I'm appreciative that my problems are not theirs. And again, it's the whole it could be worse thing. It can be worse. Well, I'm not them, but at the same time, I guess that's part of like the compassion and empathy thing of like they had that happen, and they dealt with it, and they're still doing well, and like that's that's inspiring, and it's motivational and very reassuring almost as well of like people, like I'm a person, they're a person, and they went through that and they came out the other side and are not better for it, but you can't keep them down. And that's awesome to hear, because even with the work that we do, dealing with rejection, every audition we have is got the pretty high likelihood of you're not going to get it. And
you don't know why.
And you don't know. You're not going to find out if you even find out that you didn't get it. You find out if you get it, but you don't necessarily find out if you didn't get it until the show is like in rehearsals. And you're not in it. And then you go, oh my God. And if you don't have a kind of healthy sort of self-compassion for that, because I've been dealing with this a little bit this week. I had a date on Wednesday night with this girl, and I thought it went really well. And if I'm wrong, and when this comes out, that it's that I was incorrect. But I haven't heard back from her since then, and I was beating myself up all day today at work. Of what did I do wrong, and what should I do, and what shouldn't I do, and all these things
that we do,
that people do. And doing a few things that coincidentally that you've talked about tonight helped sort of soothe that discomfort a little bit. And even talking to you tonight, distracting myself from something like that I can't control. That they all seem related, and I think that it's important.
And at the end, I was even going to suggest we could I've got a short 3-minute self-compassion break meditation.
Ooh, yay.
So that we could even do an audio recording and share it with you guys.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So that when you do have, that's a human day, that's a tough day. Rejection is a part of life, and it's painful, and I don't know anyone yet who loves the feeling of rejection, but it's part of life. That you can turn to this self-compassion break to soften, soothe, and allow those feelings that are there. We don't want to discount them. Advice like don't think about it, or just don't worry about it, it doesn't work. So to provide something practical to listeners for when they're going through a hard time, to just soothe that part of themselves.
Amazing.